So let's kick it off with the Gundo boys. Defense tech is blowing up Silicon Valley's beliefs. This is from February 13th in The Economist, a very prestigious publication. You know, there's been a lot of hate for mainstream media. I think The Economist has still got it. Great reporting. I enjoy reading it every week.
And I never knew this. I just somehow didn't pay attention to this. But The Economist never publishes under the writer's name.
Bylines,
so
no bylines.
It's all from The Economist.
Yes.
You don't know exactly who's writing it, and I think that makes it makes The Economist a unique sort of platform for writers to write on, because you're writing under this brand versus other places. New York Times, you're very clearly writing, unless they're doing like an anonymous type.
No. It lends itself to, there's a very consistent voice that happens in every piece, and you have to conform to that kind of neutral brand standard. And it also creates a little bit of like whoever wrote this could have a different world out there where they are right wing or left wing. But you're not going to read this and then go and secretly find their tweets and be like, oh, they are something, go crazy about it. You're just going to enjoy it as a piece of writing. And then their life is separate, which I think is very cool. So the article says, in the back of an unmarked office building close to LAX, the main airport of Los Angeles, stands a rack of unarmed hypersonic missiles the size of small drain pipes. On February 6th, a camouflage truck ferried one away to New Mexico for a test launch with the U.S. Air Force. Such activity used to be common in El Segundo, the LA neighborhood that was once the hub of military spaceflight. Then the Cold War ended, and with it, much of the West Coast weapons business. Now it's coming back. Castilian, which we've talked about before, they make projectiles. They were founded in 2022 by 3 alumni of SpaceX, Elon Musk's rocket and satellite company, which was also created in El Segundo. Los Angeles is not alone in reviving the warrior spirit buried deep in its past. Silicon Valley is doing so too. It's in the early days, in the mid-20th century. It created Renaissance equipment for spy planes and semiconductors for missiles. But then the peaceniks took over, and for decades, defense became a dirty word. As recently as 2 years ago, Castilian couldn't open a bank account in Silicon Valley owing to the stigma attached for making weapons. It is fascinating that.
And I actually had this with a portfolio company recently that got booted off of Rippling because it was anything defense related. So even today, you still cannot, to my knowledge, sign up for Rippling if you're doing anything in at all to do with the military.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. There is a shift. Like, Anduril, when they started, was purely defense tech. And even then, they didn't have any kinetic capabilities whatsoever. It was for a long time. It was software, but it was sensor towers, which are just cameras. And then it was drones. And even the first drones, the Anvil drone, the Ghost drone is just a helicopter that just looks.
We have to study Anduril's roadmap because it was very, very intentional. They just won the holographic, super soldier IVAS project. And many people would have said, why didn't you just start there? But they were super intentional. And many founders go through this where they're like, we're going to do this, then this, then this, then this. And they don't hit the first 2 attempts, and then they don't, or they're not able to keep going. They were so intentional, and it seems to be paying off now, landing these major, programs of record that are multi-billion-dollar, endeavors.
And so several developments have since stiffened the sinews. I love this rating. One is the war in Ukraine. Another is America's deepening rivalry with China. Most alluring, perhaps, is the sweet smell of financial success. SpaceX has become the most valuable private firm in America, worth $350 billion. Palantir, a supplier of software to Western armies and spooks, has a market value of more than $250 billion, more than Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics, a trio of defense contractors combined. Anduril, a younger firm that makes autonomous weapons, is currently raising $2.5 billion at a valuation of $28 billion. Q, a cascade of investment into smaller startups making military kit for land, sea, air, and space. PitchBook, a data gatherer, says the value of such deals in America rose by more than a third over the past 2 years to almost $40 billion. Venture funding as a whole fell over that period. So the defense tech boom is like super, super real. You got anything?
Ultimately, it's saying that, there was massive investment across a bunch of different categories during that period as well. So it's hard, comparing the past 2 years to the 2 years before that is not, super, considering that was, the Pico top of the cycle and ZERP and things like that.
Yeah.
But certainly there's a lot of demand, and $40 billion is a huge number that is, fully risk on capital to build products for our military, which I think is a healthy sort of function in that, we prefer that our government not to do some high risk stuff, but in general, we don't want all investment into the category to be government funded, right? Yeah. It's much healthier if there's more on the line and it's actual, risk dollars at work.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is like the defense tech, like the process of building a defense company is just slower because you're dealing with atoms, not bits, and you're dealing with government contracts. But the defense tech boom already feels longer than the NFT boom or the consumer social boom or really any of those. Anduril 2016, they start kind of become a unicorn, I think around 2020. And then more companies start getting funded because they de-risk the sector. But now we're 5 years into that and there's, a host of other unicorns, a host of other companies and tons of startups getting started.
We're getting to that point where the market maps are so established that if you're thinking of getting into defense tech right now, unless you're working with some truly novel technology, there's probably a handful of other heavily funded teams doing the exact same thing that you're doing already. And they may not have announced or been very public.
Exactly.
But, definitely something to be aware of. One of those situations where if there's a market map and you fit nicely into it, it might be
probably too late. Yeah. So less remarked upon is how the defense tech boom changes core tenets of the venture industry. Historically, venture investors shied away from supporting hardware industries, especially those like defense that can gobble up lots of capital. Now that's 100% true. A lot of these businesses are super capital intensive, lots of dilution. And we've seen that certainly in the space industry. That is changing. So too is the worldview of many in Silicon Valley who have turned their backs on the libertarian ethos that prevailed in recent decades in favor of a chest-thumping patriotism that celebrates American military might. Silicon Valley's renewed interest in military hardware reflects the shifting dynamics of combat on display in Ukraine. Smaller weapons, notably drones, have supplemented and sometimes supplanted heavy armaments. That has left an opening for upstarts that can make cleverer and cheaper versions. Drones powered by whizzy artificial intelligence systems are in vogue. So too is thriftiness. Take Castilian as an example. For its missile system, it uses several automotive grade chips costing a few $100s rather than expensive space grade ones. It manufactures rocket motors itself to keep costs down. SpaceX's ability to shuttle satellites cheaply into low Earth orbit where they can scrutinize the planet has made space an increasingly affordable part of battlefield technologies. Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah, and people don't forget this. We've talked about it on the show before, but ultimately SpaceX, as much as it's a space company, is a defense company, right?
Totally.
If you can take huge payloads to space and bring them back, you can do, you can basically do the same thing with weapons, right? And so one lens to view SpaceX as a defense company disguised as a intergalactic exploration company, right?
Yeah. There's a fascinating article in the Wall Street Journal today all about the mercenaries who are going to Ukraine from all over the place. They're recruiting veterans from I think Argentina and South America and Africa, and they're pulling people from all over the world.
Crazy.
And that's actually an interesting place that defense tech has not explored. I know some people have been talking about Blackwater 2.0 or starting some sort of military contractor, but looking at how does the human capital allocation and management side play into defense is something that is still kind of unexplored, almost like to-do list apps for the military or something. I'm sure there's lots of opportunity. Well, let's close out this Economist article with a great anecdote about Alex Karp, who we'll move on to in our second story. A revival of the warrior spirit is transforming Silicon Valley's relationship with the American government. The Technological Republic, which we have a copy of over there, is a forthcoming book co-authored by Alex Karp, Palantir's chief executive. It calls upon Silicon Valley to work with Uncle Sam on military programs rather than supporting environmental and social causes like those Mr. Karp champion patriotism. Those like Mr. Karp champion patriotism as the new corporate purpose, an idea that will appeal to many in Donald Trump's administration. Meanwhile, the long-established revolving door between the Pentagon and the defense industry is being extended to venture capitalists and tech firms. There's a lot of VCs going into DC and vice versa. that could help speed up the disruption to America's military-industrial complex, which many in defense tech hope for. Shyam Sankar, who we've talked about on the show many times, CTO of Palantir, he says, if the government doesn't figure out how to make the venture model work, this will not be sustainable. One issue is the meager share of spending that is available to startups. Another is the broad brush approach the Pentagon takes towards them. Mr. Sankar argues that the government needs to come to terms with Silicon Valley's power law, in which a few big winners generate fortunes, compensating for the many others that will fall by the wayside. The Pentagon also needs to transform away from cost-plus contracts, something that we've been talking about since Anduril launched for almost a decade now, which are designed to enable big weapons programs and guarantee incumbent contractors decades of revenue in favor of fixed-price ones that outsiders can bid on. So, very cool article in the Economist. We love to see these things that we've been talking about for years kind of go mainstream. You can always count on an Economist article to kind of provide the definitive overview to the world, since it is a global publication. Anything else there, or should we move on to Karp?
Let's move on to Karp. Right away in this Wall Street Journal article, you can see he's sporting his daily, what we can now determine is his daily driver.
It is.
Because he has been photographed in this a handful of times.
Yes.
Which is a Patek Philippe Aquanaut chronograph with an orange strap. It's a fantastic watch. It's available on Bezel right now. So if you're in the market, I think they basically retail for like 140, 150K. Somewhere in that range. So great daily if you've got, let's call it, 50, 100 million AUM, wear that thing. You can pretty much wear it anywhere. Karp has made it, clear. And I love this watch because it looks like a simple sport watch from afar. It doesn't scream, oh, look at this CEO with a massive Rolex on his wrist, GMT, whatever. It's timeless. It's classic. You can wear it in the boardroom. You can wear it, at a conference. And so really, just, setting the bar here.
Ben, I think it's on the next slide, by the way.
No, you can see it there.
Oh, you can see it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on his wrist.
There.
See, it's low key.
It is low key. I bet.
It's not screaming at you, but it says, I'm a man of taste. And it has its own personality. So.
It's great. I mean, Zuck is like truly leading the way in the loud opulence with like the FP Jours and the one of ones. Karp's a little bit understated. Still rocking an absolutely incredible Patek Philippe. We love to see it. But he's not making it his whole thing. He hasn't really talked about it. We had to clock it. He wasn't posting about it. He doesn't even have an X account, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But the sharp-eyed watcher.
It's crazy. It's crazy how hard we often associate founder mode with going direct. Yeah. And in many ways, Karp is going direct, but he's actually like not posting. He's just going on the craziest media circuit ever. Yeah. Where he's going out and actually seemingly bending the traditional media to him, right? And using them to communicate. And it works in this scenario because it's a super timely message. Patriotism is in. Yep. It's no longer contrarian to want to fight and work and innovate for America. But he's definitely writing the playbook of how to do mainstream media well.
Yeah, I think of going direct as just being authentic and not being media trained or on talking points and having firmly held beliefs that you just espouse for years and years and years.
And are super consistent on.
Yeah.
And he can go out and say exactly how he feels without worrying, oh, am I going to piss some people off? Because he's totally okay with pissing off some people. Right.
And I think Peter Thiel did the same thing, wrote a book, 0 to 1. Karp has a book out now and that is the foundation of his philosophy. Yeah. And then tons of podcasts, tons of, unscripted interviews, willing to talk about anything. Peter's done this with many 3-hour, 2-hour interviews, went on Rogan. Karp does the same thing. Happy to talk to anyone and doesn't need the questions ahead of time, doesn't need his talking points in front of him and can just talk about anything. You can ask him about whatever you want and he's an open book. And that is what I think of when I think of going direct. It's just, let's not, it might be direct from Karp's brain to the CNBC anchor, but for so many other people, it's the CEO to the PR person, to the press release, to the journalist who's getting, hey, can you take that out? He actually didn't mean to mention this. Oh, and oftentimes, you saw Palmer on that podcast talking about conspiracy theories and stuff. Like if that was even though that wasn't on Palmer's own show, or his feed,
it's still his message.
Yes, and that message was not passed through a committee. to where it could easily get shot down. Hey, there might be some downside to you talking about JFK or whatever. Let's not go there.
Yeah, and these are good references for founders or VCs that feel pressure. Oh, I need to figure out how to post on X. I need to figure out how to like build my own audience. And it's not for everyone. Like some people are born posters and some people are not born that way, but figure it out. But some people just don't like it. And so what's more important is having a really cohesive, exciting, meaningful message that you can just drill into people's heads. And if you build a big enough platform individually, then you can go get on our show. When we start doing guests, you can go on CNBC, go on Bloomberg, go on Rogan, et cetera, Sean Ryan, et cetera. So
it's a powerful contrarian idea that you're not ashamed of in the least, that you repeat over and over a long period of time. And if it's good enough and what you're building is real, everyone will point the camera at you and you'll just be able to speak your mind. And that's it.